I have to put on comments. Hi, it's Dale Walsh. It's Dale Walsh. I'm the host of a new show on Warrior TV called Straight, Sane, and Sober. I'm a recovered paranoid schizophrenic who now is a coach for the families of those affected by the illness, and also a prolific poet who lives in Hackensack, beautiful downtown Hackensack, New Jersey. And today I'm going to start my program off with a discussion of medication with two lovely English ladies, Dorado Choma and Robin Birdie, who are here today to talk about their experiences. But before we start, I'd like to read a little disclaimer so that there will be no misunderstandings. And the disclaimer goes like this. This broadcast is not meant as medical advice, nor is it meant to endorse or promote any particular medication or type of treatment. Mental illness is a very serious situation, so you should take medication only under consultation with a licensed medical professional, such as a psychiatrist or a licensed nurse practitioner. None of our panelists are professional mental health workers or professionals. We're just here to give our experiences and to try to help enlighten people as to the effects and the uses of medication in the psychiatric treatment. So let me begin by introducing our two panelists. First off, we have Dorado Choma, who has been in England for 13 years, and she's an artist. And I'll let you tell the audience about yourself, Dorado.
Hi. Yeah, indeed. I'm residing in the UK for last almost 16 years. I always lose count at some point. And I'm an artist. However, I am a reborn artist, meaning that I haven't been making art for all my life. I turned into art after a massive mental health breakdown, and since then, which was in March 2019, since then I never looked back and produced art every day. My journey starts in teenage years. I live with depression since then, and I have been on and off medication throughout, and many processes of increasing and decreasing dosage that I'm going to share some insight with you today.
Thank you very much, Dorado, and great to have you on the show. So our other panelist is Robin Birdie. She's a mental health worker, but she's not a professional. And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Robin?
Thank you. Yeah, so well, I'm actually based in North Wales, even though I don't have a Welsh accent whatsoever. I've never had one, and I feel really deprived that I don't have one. But for me, well, I started really becoming aware of mental health as a concept when I was in high school. And for me, I started having frequent panic attacks. And as I went into university, I was then diagnosed with a panic disorder, and I was then prescribed medication to help with that. And from there, I got sort of like an insight into what it was like to sort of cope with mental health issues and to be on medication for it. But at the same time, in my degree, I was learning about the same medications, but from a psychological perspective. So it was sometimes interesting to learn about how it was affecting my brain whilst I was taking it. But then again, it was also frustrating knowing about how they were meant to work, and when they didn't work for me, it was there like, I know how the mechanism works, and yet it's not working. So I'm lucky enough not to be on medication anymore. But it was an interesting experience, and yeah, it was interesting to sort of see the contrast between a personal and a more professional view of medication and mental health.
Well, you said you had degrees. How far did your education go, Robin?
It wasn't actually very long. It was only about 6 or 7 months that I was on the medication. By that point, I was able to, I think I understood my condition a bit better as well, to the point where I could manage the symptoms without the medication. So I was lucky enough to come off it fairly soon.
And I'm sorry. I think you misunderstood my accent. It was I said that's very interesting. Thank you very much for that information. I was just wondering about your education, not your medication.
Oh, sorry. Thankfully, my education's a bit longer than that.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, so I've just finished my master's degree. So I studied psychology with neuropsychology as an undergraduate for 3 years, and I've just finished a clinical and health psychology master's a few weeks ago. So 4 years in total.
And what's your ambition with these degrees? Do you want to become a mental health worker? Or?
Yeah, in the long run, I'd really like to go into clinical psychology and work in a hospital or a mental health facility. And to get there, there's lots of different steps. But at the moment, I'm working as a mental health support worker to sort of build up some work experience. And well, I've been given all this knowledge in my degree. It's now time to try and put it to actual use and see if I can actually help someone in real life and not just in an exam paper.
Well, I think you're helping people just by being on this broadcast, Robin. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
So, I guess the first question the first question that I think we should ask, I should give some background on myself because nobody knows me either. I'm the person, but basically in 1975 I was at Dartmouth College, which is like one of the better colleges in America. It's Ivy League, and I came up with what I thought was a great joke, which was, "Hi, I'm God." And in 1975, nobody else had thought up this joke because the joke being, how could God be 5'8"? So I was walking around Dartmouth College for a week saying my joke, and then I was taken away by the campus police, and and 3 days later, I was in a mental hospital in New York City, where I was incarcerated for 3 months, and then I came to a private psychiatric program in Hackensack, which explains how I got here and this nationally known joke of a city, and so consequently I've been here since 1976, and I found a home here, but I was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, and I had 15 hospitalizations, the last one in 2005, but no episodes since 1993. And about 3 years ago, I came up with the great idea of using my experiences and using my knowledge of the mental health system to help the families of those with schizophrenia to not only learn how to cope with their loved ones, but also how to maintain an inner focus and an inner harmony in themselves. So I've been doing that, and my calling was always writing. I have an archive of 4,000 poems, 5 books on Amazon, 5 collections of poetry on Amazon, and recently I wrote a short book about my experiences at Dartmouth and how I got taken away, and that's being edited now, and hopefully it'll be published on Amazon by Thanksgiving, which is the last Thursday in November. So that's my story, and I'd be very interested in hearing from you, Dorado, about your experience. You said that you've been on and off antidepressants for a long time, so What's your experience with that been?
I think the first time when I was subjected to medication was 2007. I was put on antidepressant, and I was on it for almost a year. However, because I was in a very toxic relationship and there was domestic violence involved, there were periods of time that I wasn't really too able to mend for myself. So at some point my medication ran out and I just did not reorder it. So I abruptly stopped taking it because there were many reasons behind it. Once, I couldn't get them. I was stuck in a very awful situation. Secondly, I felt very numb and I felt like a zombie, really. I didn't experience any emotions. I felt like I'm in a very thick mud and I can't really move. And I was thinking, is it the medication that it's making me feel like that, or is it the actual illness or my situation? I was so confused that I thought that maybe coming off those medication will be a good idea to get some clarity. However, and please do not ever try to come off any psychiatric medication on your own, because this is what happened to me. It was hell. I almost died because of intensified symptoms, because of being dizzy. I fell down the stairs at some point. I had sensations like I'm having heart attack, and it was absolutely awful. So I do not recommend it. Changes in the medication, including coming off them, needs to be really, really closely supervised by someone who is professional and who is unbiased to this what is happening around, because we are always biased towards how we feel or how we look like and what is happening around. Then, because of that awful experience of withdrawal symptoms that were excruciating, I said to myself that never again, I'm not going to take any medication ever again, because coming off them is so awful and I can't be a prisoner, stuck to medication and being limited by that. So for many, many years, I just tried to be wasn't very successful, apparently, because after a massive mental health breakdown, where are you? Did I lose you?
We're still here.
We can still hear you.
Sure. After a massive mental health breakdown in 2018, I was diagnosed with severe postnatal depression. And my GP really advised me to go on medication. I refused at first because I was petrified of going on the medication again. But as I was not getting better, actually, I was getting worse and worse week after week. At some point, somebody questioned me, is it really that I don't want to try it, or is it the aspect that maybe at some point I am denying myself to get well? Maybe I don't want to try that approach because I'm scared that, I will get better, that it's not a kind of life sentence, and medication may really help. So I finally agreed to medication. And it was 2019, and I am on it since then. However, I had several changes in dosage. At the beginning, the dose I was given was not working, so it was upped, and then recently I had a dip in my mental health, and here I am on the even higher dose. So yeah, this is how it is. I am 3 years almost on the same medication, and is it working? I'm not sure, because I have those fluctuations, but I think that everybody with mental illness do have those fluctuations, no matter if they are on medication or not. However, I think that I feel better. I think that my biased perception of my functioning is that I am better than I was without medication. And being honest, as I'm so petrified to go back again into the deep void of depression, that anytime I'm asked by the GP if I would like to start coming off it, I'm saying I'm not ready, because I'm really not ready. I'm so petrified of going back.
Well, that's great insight into your illness. That's very important, Dorado, and I admire you for that. But one thing that your story brings up is something that we can talk about in a little while after we hear Robin tell her story. But basically, the idea of titration and how all these medications, you can't just stop them. You have to like dose them down, and with in consultation with your doctor, your therapist, or whoever's giving you the medication. I think that there's like a lot of reluctance on a lot of doctors' parts to take that journey with you. Luckily, I have a doctor who is very open to, basically I was on the same dosage of my antipsychotic for 40 years of 30 milligrams a day, which is like the highest maintenance dose you can have. And in the last 2.5 years, I'm now on 5 milligrams a day. But every time I took it down like 5 or 10 milligrams, I would stay on that level for like at least like five to 6 months, and then we would talk about it again. So titration and is crucial, because the way these drugs work, Robin can probably talk about this a lot better than I can, but the way these drugs work is that they play with the neurotransmitters in your brain, and if you stop them, then the neurotransmitters don't know what to do, and the chemicals in your brain go all out of whack. So, do you want to say anything about that, Robin? Do you have any experience with that?
Yeah, so a lot of the medication that is often prescribed for situations like this to do with sort of postnatal depression, major depressive disorder, and loads of other conditions actually, which I found out a bit later, they prescribe SSRIs, which are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. So basically, I know it sounds really fancy, but basically, so in the brain, like you said, we've got loads of different neurotransmitters, and one of them is serotonin, and that is sort of it's a mood regulating chemical. And at some point it gets released, and then it does its job, and then it's reuptaken by the brain. But what they've found is that often in situations like depression, postnatal depression, it's uptaken too quickly, or too much of it is uptaken, basically. That's something they've noticed. So the point of the SSRIs is to stop it uptaking as much, or stop it uptaking so quickly. So like you said, so if you were taking this medication for quite a while, your brain gets used to not uptaking it so quickly. And if you cut it out like all in one go, the brain goes, oh my God, what's just happened? And it will just sort of almost uptake way more than it originally did before you took the medication. So it does sort of aid in physical alterations in the brain. So if you cut that out, it completely goes haywire, basically. Hence why you suffered so badly, Dorota, when you stopped. So yeah, you were right there, Dale.
Well, it seems to me that, well, I'm a schizophrenic, so schizophrenics, my medication is a dopamine regulator. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter in the brain that reacts to pleasure. And schizophrenics, actually, there's an interesting analogy, because schizophrenics and Parkinson's disease are two sides of the same coins. Schizophrenics have too much dopamine, and Parkinsonians have not enough dopamine. So so my uncle had Parkinson's disease, but that's neither here nor there. But the point is that serotonin and dopamine seem to be like the two major neurotransmitters that are in effect in mental illness, at least in serious mental illness. So the thing is that I would take my Prolixin, faithfully for a while, and then I would decide. And this is another dilemma that people with mental illness have, is that you take the medication, you feel better, you feel great, and because of the medication, and then you decide that you don't need the medication because you're feeling so great, and with that, so you like stop it abruptly, and within 2 days to 2 weeks, not only do your symptoms come back, but you're in the hospital because you're psychotic. So that's why I feel titration is so critical in getting off these medications, because dopamine, dopamine has been tied to everything from like addiction to anything else, because when something gives you pleasure, your brain like fires a little dose of dopamine. So but too much dopamine can really like send your brain into like constant overdrive, and that's what would happen to me. So whenever I would stop until I got a doctor that I could work with, I would just cold turkey the medication, and within 2 or 3 days I'd be in the hospital. So
there's perhaps this culture that we are used to, because if we never suffered mental health, we don't have any contact with psychiatric drugs. And I don't think there is enough education that they don't work the same way as antibiotics, for instance, do, right? Antibiotics, we take the course for 10 days and then abruptly just, the packet finished, we are cured. And I think this is a kind of stereotype we have in our understandings that every other drug should be the same way. And sometimes it's also psychologically connected to the perception, to the imprisonment of your condition, that not only, for me at least, it was like not only I am ill, I have this awful depression and I am limited in what I can do, but I am also tied up to this medication. And it was a bit too much. However, we need to remember that, that the support around us is important to ease those burdens of taking the medication or coming off the medication, because let's not forget that any psychiatric drug is not like the antibiotic that after 24 hours, usually you feel a positive effect, right? Your temperature goes down, you feel a bit better. Psychiatric drugs are not like that. They usually makes you feel much, much, much worse before there is any positive effect. And withstanding that period of feeling worse, so you felt hell and now you feel hell into the power of 2, this is the bravery everybody with mental health illness on medication needs to really go through, and it's very difficult.
Yeah, no, I know, I get what you're saying there. I remember when I was first prescribed, because I was prescribed antidepressants for my panic disorder, and I remember thinking, but I'm not depressed, I don't have depression, so why am I being given antidepressants? And I remember when they said, yeah, we recommend these, the first day you take them, don't be by yourself, be with your friends all day or your family. And I didn't quite get what they meant until it hit me the day I took them, and it felt like my whole world was ending, and I felt like the whole world was just going to be swallowed up. And then I was like, right, I need to find some friends. I just went, it's first day of antidepressants. They went, right, let's go to the kitchen, let's play a game or whatever, because it was in uni. But
after looking into antidepressants in more detail, I found that there are so many things that people get prescribed antidepressants for, such as, irritable bowel syndrome is one of them, PMS is another, and yet they are nothing to do with depression or depressive episodes. And yet, like you said, there's that sort of stereotype surrounding this medication, and that if you met someone who had diabetes, for example, they're going to have that for a very long time, if not the rest of their lives, and they have to take medication every day for that. They have to have injections and things like that. And yet the sort of attitude towards that compared to taking medication for a mental health issue is completely different. And yeah, like you said, I think there's just a lot of stigma, and there's lots of stereotypes surrounding it, I think.
Well, you bring up a very good point, which is when you first put on these medications, you go through hell times twice, as you say, Dorado. Because and that people say, well, okay, you have depression, or you have bipolar, or you have schizophrenic. Why don't you just take your medication? But the fact is that the medication at first, until your body gets used to it, makes you feel so terrible that you think it is better to just be psychotic and go with it, rather than put up with the pain or the uncomfortability of of the medication itself. If I could tell a little story, that this is sort of as an experiment. One time, I was at college, and I was taking 30 milligrams of Prolixin a day, and there was this one guy who just kept bugging me to let him try my medication. And I kept telling him, "You don't want to take my medication. You really don't want to take my." And he said, "No, let me try it." So I said, "Okay." One day I said, "Here's 10 milligrams of Prolixin, 5 milligram pills, and this is like a third of my daily dosage." And I gave him a side effect medication. So he went home, gets on the bed, starts playing Nintendo, and within 30 minutes he realized, after taking one 5 milligram pill, he realizes he can't move anything but his thumbs to play Nintendo. So it takes him 4 hours to be able to move his arm enough to take the side effect medication, and he finally does that after 4 hours. And then he's feeling better after 30 minutes because of side effect medication. So then, like an idiot, he takes a second pill. Long story short, he was paralyzed for 18 hours on his bed, able only to move his thumbs. And that was a third of my daily dosage. So
Well,
I
they used to say,
did it as an experiment to see if this drug was really as strong as I thought it was. But that shows like someone who is put on these medications, why they wouldn't want to continue, because it's just like too overwhelming for the body and the mind.
Yeah, from the perspective of that, in parenthood, you always have that the best punishment is the consequence of your actions. So I'm sorry, but that friends, self-inflicted some consequences on himself.
Right.
But yeah, but that's true that, we very often, if you know anything about psychiatric drugs, the fear of how will you feel until you start feeling better is this that stops people from agreeing to this medication. Because I remember myself, when I was like having suicidal thoughts, let's say, 3 times a day, then I was, suicidal every hour of the day. It was unbearable. And it's also a burden for your loved ones. And it's always this kind of, you always need to juggle, like it's like, can I do that? Can I inflict that at least 2-3 weeks before I will feel better, that I will feel even worse and I would need to be supervised, so there are those pros and cons that it's not only the person in question that gets those consequences, but also those who are around us.
Yeah, no, it's
Well,
definitely something that has to be taken into consideration, because I've had a real conflict with this sort of issue, because with mental health, it does, like you said, it affects more than just the person who has the illness, and it's a big conflict that I have, that other people have to suffer. And I've then come across some people who then use their mental health illness as an excuse to actually abuse and be purposely horrible to other people. And it's a big sort of conflict in my mind, in that, do those who have these mental health illnesses, should they take responsibility for how they make others feel if others end up getting affected by this? Because I know it's not the person's fault, but does that still mean that they should take responsibility for what happens to other people because of them? Which is the big conflict I have.
And it will
Well,
always be a dilemma, because it's it's like, is it the person speaking here, or is it the illness speaking here, right? And it will be always difficult to judge. I know that I have been horrible to people because of my ill mental health. Not that I wanted, but my coping mechanisms were activated and triggered when I felt that the situation needed it. And it's subconscious. I didn't make a decision to be horrible at this point, right? It was that something triggered me, and I reacted the best way that was, how to say, protective towards me rather than others. Because first of all, we always protect ourselves, don't we?
well, that's basically what happened to me, because after I would ended up in the hospital for 3 or 4 times because I cut off my medication suddenly, and I would go psychotic. For 30 years I didn't want to reduce my dosage, and I was very scared to reduce anything, because the specter of the hospital and psychosis was so present in my mind. And until finally I said, well, I'm feeling tired, I'm feeling over medicated now, so let's just try it. And we took it down 5 milligrams, and to 25 from 30, and ultimately I'm now on 5, and I don't think I'll ever give it up completely. I think I'm at my lowest dose ever, just because it's been so beat into my brain that without medication, you're going to go psychotic, So I'm very happy to compromise and say, okay, I'll take 5 milligrams, and and be happy. And and this is especially, this is why I got into my coaching businesses, because the families of schizophrenics and bipolar and all the major mental illnesses are so affected by the loved one's diagnosis and I call them the forgotten victims of mental health, because they're blindsided. Sometimes they feel worse, actually, than the person who's affected by the illness, because they just don't know how to cope. They're hopeless. I have a client now whose son just was committed, and I'm helping her through it and everything, but it's just the need for, I feel the need for someone like me who knows what the illness is like, rather from the inside out, rather than just from the outside in, reading about it and like the doctors do and everything. I feel that I'm performing a very valuable service.
Of course. I think that there is a gap in our communities, that very often a person is prescribed certain psychiatric drug. And don't get me wrong, if I'm ill and I'm prescribed a psychiatric drug, it means that I may not be in a position to lecture and educate my loved ones and my people who live with me of what may happen next, right? This is I'm sorry, this is not my responsibility. I am ill. If I was ill with, I don't know, with COVID, right? And they gave me some drugs, nobody will ask me to speak without having, possibility to breathe properly about what medication and side effects it can have on me. So my loved ones can be informed. Why the same principle is not applied to psychiatric drugs? Because I found it horrifying that I was struggling to articulate myself and to explain my partner that my partner that it's like it's an early stage and I feel worse, and because our loved ones want us to feel better, so there is this expectation that was driving me absolutely potty. Like, are you feeling better? Are you feeling better already? When I was thinking about taking my life more often than I was before taking medication. So I think that there is a gap that, the next of kin, the person who lives with us, is not really informed and educated about what will be happening, what they should be alerted to. Because don't get me wrong, how many people at the early stage of medication slip through the net and do something that is a bit silly, isn't it? And there is nobody really to watch.
Yeah. No, I get what you mean. It was when I worked in addiction, I worked in gambling addiction beforehand, and something that we spoke about a lot were the affected others, and that it's becoming more of a recognized thing of the other people who are affected and the other people who feel like they should be informed, like you said, that there is sort of a gap there. And I know that at least from the addiction side, I'd have to look into it for other mental health illnesses, but there are more and more charities and support services that are there purely for the affected others, for advice, information, support. And the number of people who have been affected by things like this that don't really feel like they deserve the support as well. They feel like they should just be there to help that person because they're the one going through it, not them. But in fact, everybody deserves support. It's a difficult thing to go through for everyone involved. So no, I completely get what you're saying, Dorado.
Well, the dilemma there, Robin, is that most of the time people don't know how to help people. I mean, and you're very, very correct, Dorado. There's a gap between the perception and the reality of what mental illness is. So I just feel that the purpose of medication is to help people cope and to get the brain balance back in focus. But there's so much pushback and adversity that comes with, especially at first with taking them. I mean, after a while, I would take 30 milligrams of Prolixin and I wouldn't even feel it. But, but at the first, when I was first hospitalized, they put me on 800 milligrams of Thorazine, and I said to my doctor, "You're trying to kill me, aren't you?" And he says, "No, I'm. You'll be fine." But and actually, at one point in the hospital, I was on 2,000 milligrams of Thorazine a day, and a normal dosage is like 50 milligrams a day. So, I was pretty crazy. I was pretty nuts. But the fact is that people need to be educated not only about medications, but also just about the general effects of mental illness itself.
Exactly. And there is also an aspect of I don't get the system. I don't really understand how it works, but I have a kind of feeling that most of the general practitioners, medical general practitioners, don't really have enough insight into what mental health illness is, what does it mean to live with it, and being honest, there is that approach that you go there, you have 5 minutes with them. So what they do, they prescribe you medication before even finding out what else could be done, and but this is another story. The waiting list for other approaches is long, therefore medication is the first means that is offered. However, I had a situation when I suffer from awful migraines, saying that it's like I can't function, and this is the excruciating pain that wakes me up during the night even. So I was seeking help from my GP, and because I have limited trust to medical team in this country and any other country really, I was questioning my GP, saying like, okay, you want to give me that medication, but are you aware that I am on sertraline? Oh, are you? Okay, yes. She checked from the top to the bottom, and said, yes, you can take it. And first of all, if myself as an ill person, being on antidepressants and being deprived of sleep and being in excruciating pain, can think enough clearly to educate my doctor, who has my whole file, that I am on medication, is that my responsibility or practitioner's responsibility? And then her confirmation, she's the power of authority, isn't it? She finished a medical school, right? So she should know better. However, I am this weirdo who reads those leaflets, and I'm going home, and Robin, you can help me, because I was prescribed the preventative drug to stop migraines, which was a serotonin blocker, while I'm on sertraline, which is SSRI. So I'm sorry, I didn't finish medical school, and anybody can accuse me that I'm just thinking too simplistic way. But the logic tells me that they will contradict each other.
Yeah, it is a bit sort of odd, because one is to decrease the amount of serotonin and the other is to increase the amount that is in your brain for longer. Obviously, the issue there is, obviously, I've got no idea about migraines in terms of how they work in the brain. I haven't looked into it, but I've never heard of migraines being directly caused by an increase of serotonin, which would mean that you need a serotonin blocker. But it is a bit odd that you only had to say, well, I'm doing this, and then she looks at it and goes, yeah, that's it. It's a bit of a grey area, isn't it? And there is a lack of sort of understanding and knowledge within sort of GP practices, I find, because they are automatically going, right, we'll just go straight to medication.
Yeah, there is a kind of textbook approach, right? We are told that in the first instance, I'm giving this. In the second instance, if the first one doesn't work, I'm giving this. And the third instance is referral to. Okay, but they never perceive the holistic picture there, right? But I suspect that if I was on any medication associated with diabetes, heart failure, kidney failure, you name it, any physical condition, then it will be looked into if the drugs I am on are not interfering with the drugs the doctor wants to prescribe for another condition, right? Mm-hmm. But because of its mental health, it's somehow swept under the carpet. It's like, oh, that's not important. However, it's so difficult. You are ill, but you need to also be your own advocate. You need to be your own, lawyer to fight for your rights and to keep yourself safe, which is so unfair on those who have ill mental health.
I agree with you. I understand exactly what you're saying, and I think this is like something that's like especially since COVID has become emphasized with the mental health treatment, is that the doctors are just so overwhelmed, not only by the number of patients and the caseload they have, but also big pharma. I'm not going to start on my soapbox about big pharma, but about pharmaceutical companies. But basically, they're coming out with so many new psychiatric medications so quickly that doctors can't keep up with knowledge. I mean, not only do doctors not have time to really talk to a patient more than 15 minutes, but also that there's so many new drugs coming out. I mean, Prolixin is the first generation drugs, and it's getting more and more difficult to get because the new medications that the pharmaceuticals are coming out with are like overwhelming the market, and the doctors, have no idea what the correct dosage is. They have to follow what the pharmaceutical company suggests. And I had a client whose son, the doctor had like absolutely no idea how to prescribe this medication. And, so he was living in Boston and he had to come home, and he said that he felt like a limp noodle because, and this client was an anesthesiologist, and, an anesthesiologist, every patient, he has to be very careful to like prescribe the right amount of anesthesia. So she said, I don't understand this cookie cutter approach to medication that doctors take, but it's like it's a catch 66, 3 times 22, because, they're so overwhelmed with the caseload, and then, and so they don't have time to like do the research into the drugs, and then they don't have time to see the patients to really know what's going on. So they just follow what the pharmaceuticals tell them, and a lot of times it's just like a big disaster, and it doesn't help anybody. I mean, it doesn't help the patient, it doesn't help the family, and it doesn't help the doctor.
But the kind of moral behind that story was also to let everybody know that you really need to have a bit of limited trust, or even the people who supposed to be in position to help you and know better are prone to errors and mistakes. And you need to remember that being on psychiatric drugs, this is the massive medication that is having impact on your brain, right? So whatever medication you are offered for different condition, for your allergy, for your eyes, whatever it is, you really be careful and look into if this does not interfere with your psychiatrist drug, because the effects of it can be catastrophic.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I understand what you're saying. And building on what Dale said, that's really interesting. You're talking about first and second generation antipsychotics. And I studied that in my master's. That was my thesis project, looking into prescribing behaviors for schizophrenia. And something that they're trying to promote now across sort of medical facilities is sort of this inclusive, person-centered approach to treatment and diagnosis, where they are encouraging practitioners to include the patients in the treatment choices, laying out all the options in front of them and going, this is this can cause this and this and this. And they found that overall, it does produce better results with the medication. It's patients seem to be more likely to keep up with the medication if they feel they've had more of a say in what they take and how they take it and everything. And what you were saying about the difficulty with some people still prescribing first generation, but all these new second generations and third generations coming out, we looked into all the different factors that influence how they choose one from the other. And there were just so many factors. There was their own personal beliefs, their experience, the colleagues, the patient, the guidelines from the NICE guidelines and everything. And there's just so many different factors. So I don't know how they do it. They must feel so overwhelmed to make the right treatment choice for each patient. So I honestly don't know how they do it.
Of course, they have all rights to feel overwhelmed, but you know how overwhelmed I feel when I know myself the best. I live with that condition for most of my life. I know what worked in the past, what didn't work in the past, but you just don't listen. That's the most overwhelming feeling, and there is nothing worse than being not listened to. And, mental health will be a disaster and another epidemic on this globe, because this is the problem. GPs, doctors have no really time to listen to me They don't care what I want to say. They need to just serve. So what they do, they prescribe whatever they were told to prescribe in first instance, without looking into other factors, like you said, into holistic approach, into my needs, my wants, my likes, my dislikes. And, this is the main issue, that mental health is not a physical health like that, that you can see what's happening exactly and then be certain that this is fungus or this is bacteria, right? This is so invisible that without listening to the person who lives with it, you will never make a good diagnosis. You will never help the person. So, this is the only way, holistic approach.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing is, I'm sorry, go on, Robin.
No, it's all right. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the other thing is that finding the right medication is such a trial and error process in the first place. That unless you I was very fortunate in that I had like intensive psychoanalysis. When I was at the height of my psychosis. So I had a doctor I talked to 3 times a week. I lived in a program with him and everything. And that was like an opportunity that very, very, very few people have, But what I'm saying is that the need for talk therapy and not just like medication therapy is essential, but nobody has time. And if you do have the time for it, it costs $250 an hour, and nobody can afford it.
Yeah, but you know what? Recent events in our world make me think. Okay, we don't have time. We don't have resources. All right, so let's wait for another epidemic. What happened with coronavirus? Right, it attacked, and everything had to stand still and had to be reflected on, and new approaches had to be found. How to deliver things, how to work, how to. So yeah, you don't want to invest time and energy. Let's wait for another pandemic.
Yeah,
I think we're one. Oh, go on.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
I think one thing with this pandemic is that mental health awareness and just sort of acknowledging how it can be easily affected by something by just staying indoors and not seeing friends and family. I think it sort of really came as a big sort of surprise to lots of people, and quite a few people who I know who've never really suffered from any mental health issues or really understood them. They've come up to me and gone, oh my God, I get it now. I understand. And so hopefully this, well, obviously we're still sort of fighting it, and hopefully we'll be able to get through it, but hopefully that will then come with a new understanding that will hopefully lead to sort of more inclusive treatment choices and just better support and healthcare for mental health.
Well, one of the unintended consequences of this whole pandemic has been an explosion in mental health awareness, because everybody's realizing that they have some sort of mental health problem. So, people are educating themselves. People are like more interested. Whenever I go on a show, I'm usually like the first schizophrenic that people have been exposed to, just because therefore I take my mission very seriously, because not only am I speaking to, dispel stigma and to like show that schizophrenia can be recovered from, but also I feel that I'm speaking for the millions of schizophrenics who can't articulate, as you said, Dorado, articulate what's going on with them. And I think we have like 5 minutes left, so I think we better start winding down. But would you like to have a last word, both of you?
Sure. I was first, so I can finish first. This is what I would like to say, that being prescribed medication is not the end of the world, and it can provide you with the chance to experience if your life could be better because of medication. Mine became better. But be cautious, involve your loved ones in the process, because there are moments when you may not be in position to judge what to do next. And just make sure that you have a proper supervision when coming on and off medication and throughout the process, because psychiatric drugs are not to be messed with.
Right. Thank you very much, Dorado. And Robin, any closing thoughts or anything?
Yeah, I think based on what Dorado says, it's like being prescribed medication for mental health issues, like you said, is not the end of the world. For me, it also worked for me, and it kick-started this idea of the different ways I could look after myself and how important it is to look after myself. I'm lucky these days to not need medication, but I do make use of other things. So I do mindfulness and just sort of mindful thinking, and I engage in that in quite a bit, and that really helps me. But I never would have thought of doing that without first doing the medication. And if you do end up taking medication with the help of your GP, your doctor, you don't have to do it alone, and it's not selfish to seek support and to talk about it. It's not something you have to just keep to yourself. The way I like to think of it is that if I was suffering from something physical and I'd been given medication from it, I wouldn't stay silent. If I needed support, I would talk. And so I use it the same way there. If I've been prescribed something for mental health, I deserve to talk about it. And it's not selfish to want support.
And I endorse what both of you said completely. And I just want to say that I was hospitalized 15 times, and I'm very proud and lucky that I got out 15 times, because they would increase my medication and I would come back to my senses, or what senses I had at the time. And but a lot of people don't make it out. Don't make it back every time. I have a few friends who, they were very functional and highly effective for years, and then circumstances or something would intervene, and they would and now they're basically lost. And so I just want to say that, I am very grateful for my Prolix, and it saved my life. I don't want to, I would never put it down, even though, a lot of people say to me, "You don't need medication, Dale, and you're perfectly fine. You're the sanest person I know." And I always tell them, "See me without my medication, then say that." So, but basically, just work with your doctor, work and try to be aware of yourself and understand the illness itself. And let me just close here by saying that tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. UK time, 8 p.m. Australia time, we'll be back on Warrior TV with Steve Knapp, talking about the Power Hour of Mindfulness. And I know, Dorado, you have what is it, Breakfast with Art and everything, or?
It's Art, My Medicine, which is taking place this Saturday, 9 a.m. UK.
And what about you, Robin? You have a show, or are you just waiting to be ready to have a show?
No, me and one of the other warriors, Abigail, we've got our official second episode of Music in Medicine. I think that's next Thursday, so it's a week and 2 days, and that will be 1 o'clock UK time.
Okay, and this has been the premiere debut show of Straight, Sane, and Sober with Dale Walsh, and I hope everybody has enjoyed it and found it edifying. And thank you very much, both of you, Dorado and Robin, for your contributions, and best of luck, and keep up the good work and be strong. So I think that's our hour, and thank you very much.
Thank you.